Hello fellow cyborgs and welcome to my autumn TBR. So I definitely want to reread one of my autumn-y books that I have on my physical shelves, but I'm not sure which one. There are many to choose from, and I thought we could peruse my bookshelves, find the autumnal picks that I currently have and I would like to reread, and then I could leave it up to you to tell me which ones I'm going to read this autumn. So let's go look at my bookshelves and see what autumnal books we can find. So this is the first bookshelf we're going to look at. My black, brown, gray to white. And this is the second shelf, purple, blue, and green. Over here, this tall and skinny one that you'll be seeing, this is where I keep all of my unread books, so this is my physical TBR. I have organized it by the color of the pages, which you will see later, but let's go to the white books that I have read. So let's see, we've got some comics and children's picture books, and we're not going to pull any of those. No, not quite autumnal. That's Christmassy. Just read that. No, don't want to read that. So let's look. We've got some plays. Smoke It's in Your Eyes. Not necessarily autumnally. Dead Blonde's Bad Mothers would definitely be autumnally because it's horror. However, I just reread that, so we're going to leave that on the shelf. We've got a bunch of Victorian works, which are autumnally because of October. However, I spy with my little eye something up there, so let me grab it real quick. So this is Poems Bewitched and Haunted. This is an Everyman Library's Pocket Poet Collection, and I believe it is edited by John Hollander. So this is a collection of spooky poetry, and I've read this a couple times. There are a lot of poems in here that I really like, and this is definitely going to go on the autumn potential TBR. So looking at the rest of these, I'm not, oh well, Rebecca's kind of autumnally. However, I have another Daphne du Maurier in mind that I think is even more autumnally. So we're going to leave that one there, but Rebecca would potentially be a good spooky autumnal read. So here we have some more books whose pages are slightly darker, and then we'll go over to the slightly darker books here. So this is my off-white to tan shelf, and let's see what we can find. So we've got a ton of Jane Austens here, which don't remind me of fall. They remind me of spring, and they also remind me of Jane Austen July, so we're going to leave that. Good Omens does not necessarily remind me of fall, so we'll leave that as well. Then we've got some picture books. The Ballad of Black Tom actually is quite spooky, so that would work, but I just read that, so I don't need to reread that yet. Let's see here. Okay, so this is definitely an autumnal pick. This is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, probably one of the quintessential autumnal Halloween reads. I absolutely love the Disney movie more than the book. However, this is definitely autumnally, so we're going to add it to the pile. And then, of course, we have some Elizabeth Gaskells, we have Cranford, and also Wives and Daughters, but those aren't necessarily specifically autumnal, it's just because they're Victobery. And then moving over here, we have Anne of Green Gables, and that one is definitely more of a springtime for me. So let's move on to the next shelf. So here we have my physical TBR that are like dark tan pages. So these are the older books that I have, or just like the more sun damaged and discolored, but I really like this shelf. It's got all of my tan decorations as well. Moving over, we have the yellow and pink shelf. So let's start with the yellow section. So we've got graphic novel, children's book, Mansfield Park, not particularly autumnally. Trail of Lightning is spooky because it has a lot of monsters in it, but I'm not feeling it right now. The Guild of Stories is also spooky because it has a vampire in it. This is actually a black lesbian vampire novel by Joelle Gomez, but I don't particularly feel like reading that right now. Fantasy, children's, Foreign Soil, no. The Story of Alice, no. That's got some glare, but it was beauty. Song of Solomon, no. There, and The Song of Low Water. Nope, I'm not really seeing any autumns there. So looking at the pink books, we definitely have an autumnal pick there, which is Dracula by Bram Stoker, but I don't feel like reading that. And then we also have Jane Eyre, which is by Charlotte Brontë, which is another classic, but I don't feel like reading Jane Eyre either. And then the rest of them look like summery books. Oh, Dead Girls would kind of be autumnally because it has to do with murder and it's like a coming of age story, but I read that this year, so I don't want to reread it. All right, so let's keep looking. So the next shelf is this like blue and red shelf, and it's cute, and I especially like my figurine of Smee. So let's look over here at the orange and red shelf. So the orange and red shelf, and let's go to the orange section first. So this is East of Eden, not autumnally, and I don't want to tackle rereading my potentially favorite book of all time right now. And then we've got children's books and comics and children's books. a poem for every autumn day. I'll show this book to you. I'm not going to reread it, but I'll show it to you because it's pretty. Ooh, I did not like this collection of autumn poetry. I just don't think that I have the same taste as Ali of Siri. I also feel like I wanted every poem in here to give me autumnal vibes, and it didn't. It was literally a poem for every autumn day. So not my favorite thing, pretty though. And so I'll keep it on my shelves. There were a couple in here that I liked, I believe, but yeah, I'm not going to prioritize rereading that. Okay, then we've got the Brontë collection, and Brontë books are definitely autumnally. So in here is Jane Eyre, Agnes Grey, Villette, Wuthering Heights, The Professor, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Not Shirley, because reasons. I don't feel like pulling any of these out, even though they're beautiful books. You've seen them before in my Brontë binge series. Every time I held up a book, it was one of these, I believe. So no, don't feel like rereading those, actually. And then Hyde, I read that this year, so we're not going to read that. And then these are 2 children's books, so we'll just leave those there. So moving on to the red books, children's. So this one has a ghost in it. This is Tryst by Elsworth Thane. It is like a ghost story, and it's a romance at the same time. Not sexually explicit, but romance being the main plot point of it. I've been meaning to reread this, but I don't feel like putting it on this list and having you guys make me. If you want to rage and make me read this, then let me know in the comments down below, but for now I'm going to leave that where it is. Dead Mountain is true crime. Well, it's not crime. It's about the Dyatlov Pass incident where a bunch of hikers died inexplicably and they don't know why. I'm not going to put this on the list. This is Christmas collection, so no, this is sci-fi. It's really, really good, but no, I don't feel like putting that on the list. Then over here we have children's fantasy, children's biography about Beatrix Potter. Don't feel like putting it on there. Abarat, and then another children's book. So I think we're going to leave everything here. So this is my dark red and maroon and the one pink book that I don't know what to do with book. So, okay. So this one definitely we're going to have to pull out. Well, that was Nightmare. But this is not. This is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a special edition that I think maybe Acacia bought this for me from the UK, or maybe I did with her blessing. We weren't there. We were just ordering stuff online if it happened. But I have never read this edition of The Night Circus, but I really love this edition. And The Night Circus is like the pièce de résistance of autumnal literature, in my opinion. I don't know if I would read this physical copy because I love the audiobook too much. However, The Night Circus is definitely going on the pile. So looking at the rest of the books, no. Nope. No. Well, Patrin is potentially autumnally. Let me pull it out just for you. So this is a small press novella, Patrin by Teresa Kishkin, and this is about a woman who ends up traveling over to Eastern Europe to potentially pursue Roma heritage in her family line. And I remember the beginning of this where she's just like I think she's in Victoria, British Columbia, or somewhere in British Columbia, and they're talking about typewriters and doing research in old libraries, and it gives me very dark academia vibes. Well, maybe not dark academia, just plain academia vibes. But I didn't love the ending. But I kept this on my shelf. You know what? Fine, we're going to add it to the pile. Fine, we'll add it to the pile. And we're not adding that to the pile. I don't know if I'll ever read that in my life, but it is a beautiful copy of a book, and it's like fairy tale reference material. It's a collection of Andrew Lang's fairy tales, and it's just I will be buried with it. So we're not touching it, but it's beautiful. Fine, I'll show you. Isn't it lovely? It's one of the Barnes & Noble's leather-bound ones. So then we have the brown and gray shelves. So here in the brown shelf, I don't normally do this. These are books that I've not read, but I've added it to my colored bookshelves because they're all brown and I just wanted them to live there. I am already currently reading Can You Forgive Her by Anthony Trollope, and this is the rest of the Palliser series. I talked about it in a recent video. They're on the brown shelf, but they're disqualified because I have to read them in order, and I'm doing it, guys, okay? I've already got it on the list. So over here, Cemetery Boys, definitely autumnal, definitely spoopy, definitely one of my loves. However, I don't feel like rereading it this autumn, but it's wonderful. I've talked about it a bunch on my channel. It's been like the new sleeper hit on my channel. It's absolutely lovely. Poetry collection, comic, graphic novel, no, way too heavy. Wonderful, I love it. Way too heavy. Nonfiction, don't feel like it. Shakespeare, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so in the back, you'll see Mercer Mayer's The Sleeping Beauty, which is wonderful, and then the Complete Tales of Beatrix Potter over here in this gray side. So we've got a children's book, Wuthering Heights. We've already talked about Wuthering Heights. Then we have Persephone Classics. So we have Consider the Years, Operation Heartbreak, Lady Rose and Mrs. Memory, and the Montana Stories. Sorry, I was pointing at the wrong thing. I was reading with my eyeballs, not through the screen. These are all not autumnally. We're going to leave them. Then we have a true crime. It's like a middle grade or YA biography of Lizzie Borden. We're going to leave that there. And we're also going to leave, that's a comic. And then we're also going to leave From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doty over there too. So we're going to leave the gray shelf as is. Also, I don't mean to be dismissive of comics. They are as legitimate of an art form as any of these novels, etc. I just don't want to include comics in this poll, so we're going to leave it. Speaking of more comics, here are the Hellboy 1 through 4 that I kept, Swamp Thing, and then also Saga, and then a cute bookmark holder, which looks like an old typewriter. So here are all of the black spined books that I have in my collection. Sci-fi, no. Nature nonfiction, no. And then fucking Shirley Jackson. Excuse my language, but Shirley Jackson, love her. We Have Always Lived in the Castle, The Haunting of Hill House, The Sundial, The Bird's Nest. I'll love all of the books, but I love her as an author. I will read everything eventually, but we're going to leave it. Then John Steinbeck, no. Then we've got Sappho, no. Fairy Tale, Sci-Fi, Christmas Wonder, The Mischief of the Mistletoe. It's a lovely Christmas romance. Let's see, Fairy, nonfiction, Lilith's Brood, wonderful, amazing, I love it. The Stars and the Blackness Between, such a cozy, but it's more summery or springy. So then we've got Dracula, Leroy Abhorsen, The October Country by Ray Bradbury. So I read that this year. I think it was earlier this year. That would be autumnally, not necessarily because it's all about October, but a lot of the stories in The October Country are spooky, but we're going to leave it. Then The Tribe, I recently read that. That is a horror, that would count, but we're going to leave it. I recently read it. No. Oh, I found one. Okay. So this is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I have been intending to reread Neil Gaiman's books and see what I truly think of them. And this one is my most beloved of Neil Gaiman's books. I remember being lovely in one chapter called The Dance Macabre, almost making me cry. So yeah, this is definitely going on the list. And then we have, Donna Tartt's The Secret History would definitely be autumnally. However, I read that in the last 3 years, and that is a heavy book that I do not want to read every year or even every 3 years. So we're going to leave that there. Ghostland, I really, really like it, and rereading it, I got so much more out of it. It is a nonfiction about ghosts and historical places in America and the stories we tell around them. But like I said, I recently reread it, like in the last 3-4 years. I don't feel like picking it up again. A children's picture book, more Calvin and Hobbes, A Monster Calls, which is not autumnally, more children's picture books, and then Alice, Through the Looking Glass. So let's move on to a more colorful bookshelf. All right, now on to the purple shelf. So if we look at the books here, Carry On by Rainbow Rowell has the academia vibe of that autumn could carry, but I don't necessarily tie that to dark academia or to autumn specifically. So we'll go ahead and skip that one and not pull that one today. Witch and the Secret of Platform 13 by Eva Ibbotson. Witch is about witches, so that's kind of spoopy, but I don't feel like reading middle grade right now. Let's look. Great Expectations. That one is definitely autumnally. So not only is this Victorian, this is by Charles Dickens. It starts on Christmas Eve, but this starts in a graveyard and it has other, I remember, macabre settings and themes and imagery to it. So this one is definitely a potential autumnal read. Calvin and Hobbes. This is some emo French poetry by Charles Baudelaire, but I don't really feel like picking this up. Hood Feminism, Aberrant. And Good Luck Girls is also kind of spooky because that has supernatural horror elements to it, but I recently read that one and I don't feel like rereading it again. So moving on to the dark blue shelf, I have a Dark Crystal graphic novel back there, which you can see hiding. So we start out with some picture books. Stella Luna has bats in it, which is spoopy, but again, that children's picture book, I don't need you guys to vote on that. I can read that whenever. Nimona has some fantasy elements to it, but it's not necessarily autumnal. Wayward Son is a road trip. That's more of a summer thing for me. Same with How to Love a Jamaican. This is a old copy of Little Women, so that one I equate more with not autumn. Bear and the Nightingale, I don't really think of autumn. The Between by Tananarive Due, that one is psychological horror, so it does have that horror element to it, but doesn't necessarily feel autumnal to me. Backwater, that one's definitely winter. Serena's definitely summer. Robert Frost is more wintry. I don't think any of these are autumnally, so let's move on. So then we have the light blue shelf, and at the back you can see we have P is for Pterodactyl, a picture book which I love. I have a mermaid reading print that I got from a lovely friend, Miss Hazeltine's book for shy cats, and then My Ailing Calathea. It's always struggling, never doing well. But anyway, so ignoring the children's picture books, We do have Colm Toybean's The Master. I don't remember if this is not necessarily autumnally. I forget who this is supposed to be about, but it's about an author, an American author. I remember this being very good, like 4 stars, and what I consider to be general fiction and historical general fiction at that, which is not normally my jam. So I haven't read this in a long time, so this might be interesting to revisit. We'll have to see. Kindred and When No One Is Watching are both have some like horror-ish thriller elements to it, but not necessarily autumnal. Not Just a Witch and Dial a Ghost. Again, that's similar to the other Eva Ibbotson. It is spoopy, but I don't feel like reading children's middle grade. So moving on to the other half, we have winter children's book, not autumnal, summery, not autumnal, not autumnal, no. The Maestro on the shelf would be like the most to be autumnally, I think, but still not quite autumnally enough. Can I say that weird word anymore? To the Lighthouse, no, and Snow Queen, no. That's like very wintry books. So let's move on to the next shelf. So this is my teal and mermaid shelf. So we have Suki and the Mermaid back there, and then Pearl, which is another mermaid picture book, and then Disney's Robin Hood. It's teal, okay? So let's look at the books. So obviously The Haunting of Granite Falls has ghosts, but not gonna pull that one like I've said with the other Ibbotsons. Frankenstein is kind of spooky, but I read that a couple years ago and I don't feel like rereading it now. And then, oh, okay, so this is one. A huge part of this is a graveyard historian researching, I believe it's Highgate Cemetery, and there's a ghost in this. I've been meaning to reread this for a while, so I think this might be the time. So let's add that to the pile. The Brave, which is wonderful, but not necessarily autumnal. I don't want to reread that right now. Emma, also wonderful, but I don't want to add that right now. And then children's picture books, and then Shakespeare. So let's move on to the next shelf. And here is the like medium green shelf. Fake plant right there, who in the back you can see Bambi picture book, and then also Verdi children's picture book, and then also stack here. I think these are the I Can't Sleep Little Bear series, if I remember correctly. So let's have a look at the proper books. There's Shirley Jackson, stereotypically spoopy witchy. However, let me tell you, is a collection of all sorts of things, and I don't remember this one being particularly autumnal, not to mention that the cover, let me just show it to you. It's like bright green and very summery, so I don't think that one's going to go with the vibes. One that is, though, is Tam Lin. This is definitely autumnally. This is a dark academia book that has the realm of fairy in it, with like fays and stuff. So this is definitely very autumnally, so we're going to add that to the pile. I'm sorry if the leading books are making you upset. So looking at the rest of the books, Thomas Hardy, you know, this one, I really enjoy The Mayor of Casterbridge. Heck, why don't we just pull it out? So this gives me autumnal vibes only because of Victober and Victorian books giving me autumnal vibes. Also, Thomas Hardy being kind of like glum and having twisted plots and twisted characters is, you know, kind of in that twisted Halloween. So Halloween vibe. God, I couldn't get my words out. This is the Hardy that I've enjoyed the most. I believe I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed the audiobook when I read this, or when I listened to it the first time, when I read it through my ears. And so, yeah, if we need to reread it, this could potentially be the season. So then we've got Walden, Fantasy. No, that's the Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury, with a really pretty cover, by the way. But that one reminds me more of summertime, so we're going to leave that back on the shelves. However, this one is very autumnally from what I can remember. So this is Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel, and this is a really beautiful gothic edition. I think it even has sprayed edge on top. So I remember this being steeped in spooky atmosphere and imagery. This one is definitely autumnally. We're gonna add that to the pile. All right, and then our final shelf here. So on the left, these are like the books that I want to remind myself that I have to read for my physical TBR. These are sleeves of books that I'm currently reading, and then we have the dark green books. So let's have a look over there. Oh, and in the back you'll see Frankenstein Takes the Cake, which is a adorable children's picture book. So no, not autumnally. North and South would be potentially a smidge autumnally just because of October, but I'm going to leave that there for now. I have a couple classics already in the pile. So then no. This one's autumnally because it's Eva Ibbotson and it's spoopy, but we're going to leave it. Sci-fi, no. Secret Garden, how I think that's more springy, but I'm not sure. This is another Thomas Hardy. This is Desperate Remedies, but since we already have a Thomas Hardy, we're going to leave it. Three Musketeers, no. Bitter, no. Mexican Gothic is definitely spoopy, as is Sir Simon Super Scarer, which is the children's picture book next to it. We already talked about picture books. We're not going to add any. Mexican Gothic is definitely would fit in with this. I don't know if it's necessarily autumnal, but it's definitely spooky and it's a thriller and it's atmospheric. However, I just recently read it, so we're going to leave that one on the shelf as well. All right, so let's see what we've just pulled from all of the shelves and the ones yonder as well. Okay, so we're back. So when looking at this stack of books that we've chosen, I think that I definitely want to read one of them, and I'm not even going to make you guys vote. Poems Bewitched and Haunted. This is, like I said, a This is a Halloween autumn poetry collection, and this will be very easy for me to dip in and out through the months of September, October, and maybe into November. So this is definitely something I will be rereading this autumn. So for the rest of the books that we picked out together, there are 10, and in the polls I can post in the community section of my channel, I am limited to 5 things per poll, which is annoying, but fine, YouTube, have power over me. So if I want to split this up into 5 and 5, I thought that we could split it up by you choose one audiobook and choose one book that I will read with my eyeballs. So let's go into the books that I think I would prefer to read on audiobook. So first off, we have Something Wicked, This Way Comes, a Halloween modern classic. Is this middle grade? I don't know. This has to do with a spooky carnival. Ray Bradbury is a delight all the time, but with a good audiobook narrator is an especial delight. So this is the first of 5 audiobook reread picks that you could choose from. So this is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, known by many, specifically Katie of Books and Things, that this is a good entry point into Charles Dickens. This is also, I think, one of the most macabre Charles Dickens. The imagery that it involves, the cemetery, Miss Havisham. Even I remember, I think there's a lawyer's office where there's like grease marks on the wall from his clients putting their backs against the wall because he creeped them out. There's lots of good, creepy, macabre gems in here. However, it's Charles Dickens, it's long. This edition is over 500 pages, it is close to 600 pages, and I don't think that I would be able to read this with my eyeballs over the course of autumn. It would be the only thing I was doing, and I have other plans. I also have an audiobook already in my collection narrated by Simon Preble, and I remember that being very good. So I will definitely jump on the audiobook train for this if you guys force me to reread this one this year. So as previously mentioned, The Night Circus, there is an audiobook narrated by Jim Dale, and it is a delight. And I don't know that I don't know that I will ever read you, even though you are beautiful. You are a representation of the audiobook that I love, and that is fine. The core plot has to do with a duel of sorcerers, but the real reason why you read this is because of the Night Circus, the titular Night Circus, which is this magical, wondrous, not at all creepy, beautiful, toffee-scented popcorn, hot chocolate of a circus, and all of the autumnal vibes. This also, I believe, is set in the Victorian era, or it may be Edwardian, so you also have like that Victober vibe going to this, even though this is not Victorian, it is modern. So this would be another audiobook reread. Vote for it if you want me to reread it this autumn. So the 4th reread pick is The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. I just remember the audiobook being so lovely to listen to. I believe it's the one narrated by Pamela Garrison. And the thing that I distinctly remember about the audiobook being an asset, there's specifically a character who I think has a Scottish accent, and she did that accent, and it helped me keep the characters in track, like keep track of the characters. I also don't particularly love Thomas Hardy's writing style. I find that it does not capture me easily, so being able to have it read to me rather than reading it with my eyeballs would also help with it. The premise of it is this man, drunkenly, I believe, sells his wife and daughter to random dude at, I think, a county fair. And so then we see the ramifications of this life choice catch up with him. I remember there being really good female characters and twisty-wisty plots and surprising things. Vote for The Mayor of Casterbridge if you want to know more, because then I'll remember. And the final audiobook choice pick is The Master by Colm Toibeen. This, as I mentioned, is a historical fiction, and I remembered this is a kind of about the life of Henry James, who's an American novelist who I don't care for, but I remember this being a very slow read, but having beautiful moments. And I specifically remember this one scene in Venice with a dress floating in a lagoon, and it's such a really haunting image. So maybe it's autumnal, I don't know, we'll find out together. However, I remember this being very slow, which means Would this take me all 3 months to read if I read it with my eyeballs? Perhaps. Do I want to make this take 3 months? No, but I can get the audiobook. So moving on to the books that I will reread with my eyes that you can choose between. So first up is Tam Lin by Pamela Dean. This is a loose retelling of Tam Lin, which I believe is, I don't know if it's an epic poem, but it's a poem, and it has to do with somebody being kidnapped into the realm of fairy. This has tons of dark academia vibes. Our main character, whose name escapes me, is starting college, and I believe it's in New England, so crunchy fall leaves, figuring out school classes, and then there's some like weird kids on campus. Very Cullen vibes, but they are not vampires. They're fairies. So this is chunky, but I don't think there's an audiobook version of this, and if you choose this, then I will luxuriate in this long book over the course of the 3 months, and it will be grand and glorious. So yes, Tam Lin by Pamela Dean. First choice for rereading it with my eyeballs this autumn. Then we have The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is a middle grade book. I think it is. That's why I made that weird noise. Book where we follow Bod, who is raised in a graveyard, I believe by spooks and spirits. And I remember this having a kind of episodic feel to it because I specifically remember one chapter that I loved, which I talked about earlier. So I feel like I'd want to take my time with this one, see if I actually enjoy it for what it is rather than letting it zoom through my ears with audiobook. So that's why this is on the list. Let's see if this stands up to, I believe, the 4 stars that I originally gave it. If you want to know, then vote for this one. This is your second choice for the books I reread with my eyeballs. And then we have Teresa Kishkin's Patrin. This is a novella, which is short and sweet. I don't know if it's autumnal, but it does have 1970s researchy librarian vibes to it. And because this is such a small press, which is called Mother Tongue Publishing Limited out of Salt Spring Island in British Columbia, there's no audiobook available for this, so I have to reread this with my eyeballs. So if you take pity on me and you choose this novella, which is less than 200 pages, it is 130 pages, then hopefully I'll be able to get to it quickly, and then maybe I'll even be able to read another one of the books with my eyeballs. Who's to say? Your fourth choice is Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. So the reason why this one is not an audio read is because I could not find a free audiobook for it. I would have to buy it on Libro.fm, and I don't feel like I want to own this audiobook specifically. So we'll just reread it with my eyeballs if you make me this autumn. So this has to do with a pair of twins, and there's a ghost perspective throughout a lot of the book. And then there's also a deep look at the history of Highgate Cemetery in London. I don't know if it's autumny, but it has ghosts and cemeteries, so it's spoopy. So if you want me to finally reread this book and see what I actually think of it with a more contemporary Amanda mind, because I think I read this like 10 years ago, then choose Her Fearful Symmetry, choice number 4 for Reread with my eyeballs this autumn. And your final eyeball reread choice is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I figured that I would read this because it's a really pretty and atmospheric, and I would take my time with this one too. It's not particularly long. It's less than 300 pages, I think, or about 300 pages. So it wouldn't take all month, but, you know, luxuriate in the du Maurier. It's psychological thriller. What happened? Who are you? And also, I believe this is set in the Victorian era, which is autumnally in my book. So this is your final 5th choice for rereading it with my eyeballs this autumn. My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. So those are the 10 choices that you can choose from to make me reread this autumn. If you don't want to participate in the community poll, you can tell me in the comments down below which you vote for audiobook and reread with eyeballs. And you're also allowed to double dip. I will take that. So if you feel particularly powerful about your choices, then if you comment down below and also vote in the poll is anonymous, I believe. So I won't know that you voted in the poll, and it'll be counted twice, and you just get that extra little gem of a choice. Go ahead and vote for the poll. I will close the poll in probably the 2nd or 3rd of September. I will put the deadline up on the poll so everybody can see it even if they didn't see this video, because I will need to get started on my rereads starting September, because that in my mind is when autumn starts. Vote in the comments, vote in the polls, and until next time, thank you for shopping my bookshelves with me. Let me know what autumnally things you are going to reread this year, and continue to be lovely. So this one differently, we're gonna have to pull out. And let the books fall. Oh no! Woo! Chaos. Hang on. Go back here, Sneezy. Well, that was a nightmare. I also find that Thomas Hardy, I don't, excuse me. Oh, okay. Well, it's 11 o'clock.